This story focuses on an extraordinary case that deeply affected scientists, psychologists, and millions of people around the world. In a small village in Russia's Volgograd region, a boy named Boris Kipriyanovich made a shocking claim when he was just 5 years old. According to Boris, he hadn't lived on Earth in his previous life, he had lived on the planet Mars. Was this simply the imagination of a gifted child, or could it be part of a phenomenon that science still struggles to explain? Today, we're going to examine this story in depth. We'll explore scientific interpretations, eyewitness accounts, and the details that make this case impossible to ignore. Make sure you watch until the end because the most surprising revelations are still ahead. Boris's mother, Nadezhda Kipriyanovich, says her pregnancy was completely normal. She experienced no unusual pain, no complications, and the birth itself was surprisingly fast and easy. But what truly stood out were Boris's actions immediately after he was born. Nadezhda recalls the moment clearly. When Boris was born, he lifted his head and looked straight at me. The doctor said this wasn't normal. Newborn babies don't have neck muscles developed enough to do that. As the months passed, Boris's unusual abilities became more obvious. At 4 months old, he could fully control his head. By 7 months, he had started speaking his first words. At 1 year, he was forming complete, meaningful sentences. At 1.5, he could read newspapers and understand what he was reading. By age 2, he was painting with colors and drawing complex geometric shapes. His family was completely ordinary. They lived a modest middle-class life. His mother had medical training, and his father was a retired military officer. There were books in the house, but no special focus on space, astronomy, or science fiction. By the time Boris turned 2, his parents realized this was far beyond early intelligence. The child was speaking confidently about subjects no one had ever taught him. One day, Boris calmly explained the order of the planets in the solar system to his mother: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. He listed them effortlessly without hesitation. His parents were certain no one had taught him this. But what made the situation even more unsettling was this. Boris didn't just know the names of the planets, he described their physical characteristics, their structure, and how they differed from one another. Mars had a very thin atmosphere, Boris would say. That's why people couldn't live on the surface. It was dangerous. They had to move underground. At first, his mother assumed he must have learned this from television or somewhere else. But there was no television in their home. The family didn't watch space documentaries or talk about astronomy. No one had ever taught Boris these ideas. Another remarkable trait Boris had was his memory. Once he saw or heard something, he never forgot it. According to specialists, he possessed a photographic memory. When he was 3 years old, the family went camping together. At night, Boris stared up at the sky and began naming the constellations. Not only did he know their names, but he also explained the mythological stories behind each one. His father couldn't hide his amazement. This child hasn't even started school yet. Where is he getting this knowledge from? If you want more real and mysterious stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. When Boris turned 5, one evening during dinner, he suddenly began to speak. What he said stunned everyone at the table. "I came from Mars," he said calmly. "I lived there. There was a war, and I came here." At first, his parents thought it was just a game. Children imagine things. They create stories. But Boris was different. His descriptions were detailed, consistent, and always the same. Here's what Boris claimed about Mars. The past of Mars. Mars used to be like Earth. It had oceans and rivers. People lived on the surface. Then a great disaster happened. The atmosphere disappeared, the water vanished, and people had to move underground. Martian civilization. The people there were very tall, about 7 meters. They didn't need oxygen to breathe. They could live using carbon dioxide. They lived extremely long lives, sometimes thousands of years. Technology. We had advanced spacecraft. We traveled between planets. We even came to Earth. Some of the pyramids in Egypt were built with our help. War and destruction. A terrible war broke out between two Martian cities. Nuclear weapons were used. The atmosphere was destroyed completely. Many people died. I died in that war too. As Boris continued to speak, his stories became so detailed and consistent that his mother, Nadezhda, began writing everything down. These were no longer the random fantasies of a child. There was a structure to what he was saying. Boris didn't only talk about Mars as a place, he talked about his own life there. He would say, I was a pilot. I flew spacecraft. We came to Earth for trade. We had connections with Egypt and Lemuria. One of Boris's most astonishing claims involved the Great Sphinx of Egypt. When he was 7 years old, he became visibly excited while watching a documentary and suddenly said, there is a mechanism behind the Sphinx's ear. If it's opened, a great secret will be revealed. Humanity's future will change. Even more unsettling was how precisely he described its location. Behind the left ear, there's a vertical panel, he explained. It needs to be opened, but it's not simple. There's a special mechanism. This claim drew attention because some archaeologists and researchers have long suggested that hidden chambers may exist inside the Sphinx. Ground-penetrating radar scans have indicated possible cavities, but Egyptian authorities have not allowed excavations. According to Boris, whatever lies inside the Sphinx holds answers about humanity's origins. There is knowledge there, he said. How humans were created, how we came from Mars, why we are here. It's all written inside. As Boris's story spread through local media, it began to attract the attention of Russian scientists. In 2004, a research team from the Russian Academy of Sciences visited Boris and his family. The group included psychologists, neurologists, and space science experts. The tests and observations they conducted were striking. IQ assessment. Boris scored far above the average range. His intelligence level exceeded what would normally be expected from an 8-year-old child. Astronomical knowledge. Professional astronomers questioned Boris about Mars. Some of his answers aligned with information that had not yet been confirmed by science at the time. For example, Boris claims that Mars had water ice at its poles. This fact was officially confirmed by NASA in 2008, years after Boris had made the statement. Psychological evaluation. Psychologists who examined Boris found no signs of psychological disorders, delusional thinking, or fantasy-based behavior. According to specialists, he was emotionally stable and mentally healthy. Neurological examination. Brain scans, however, revealed something unusual. Boris showed heightened activity in regions associated with memory and visual spatial processing. This unexpected finding drew even more attention from researchers. Professor Vladislav Lugovenko, one of the experts involved, commented, "Could what Boris describes be real? Scientifically, we cannot prove it, but what stands out is the depth of his knowledge and the consistency of his explanations. He doesn't speak like someone inventing stories. He speaks like someone remembering." Boris didn't limit his claims to Mars alone. He also spoke about a lost civilization on Earth, Lemuria. Lemuria existed in the Indian Ocean, Boris said. It was a highly advanced civilization. It had connections with Mars. I lived there too. According to Boris, the Lemurians used Martian technology to build incredible structures. This civilization is said to have existed around 70,000 years ago, before being destroyed by a massive catastrophe. What makes this even more intriguing is that some researchers believe Lemuria may have been a real continent mentioned in ancient texts and legends. Boris described Lemuria like this. The Lemurians were giants, about 9 meters tall. They communicated through telepathy. They had physical bodies, but their energy bodies were even stronger. A massive earthquake followed by a tsunami destroyed Lemuria. Only a few islands survived. Some islands in the Pacific and Indian Oceans are remnants of Lemuria today. Naturally, Boris's story was met with strong skepticism. Many scientists and researchers questioned these claims, arguing that they lacked verifiable evidence. Some suggested the family fabricated the story for financial gain. Others believed Boris was simply repeating information he had heard from his parents or surroundings. Skeptics' main arguments: lack of evidence. There is no concrete physical proof that directly supports Boris's claims. Skeptics approached Boris Kipriyanovich's story with caution. For them, there were far more ordinary explanations behind what he described. Children's imagination. Critics argue that children have extremely vivid imaginations. They can create stories that feel completely real. Boris's accounts, they say, could be the results of this natural ability. Parental influence. Boris's mother was an educated woman. Skeptics suggest she may have unintentionally passed information to her child. Media attention. As the stories spread, the family attracted media interest. Some critics believe this attention may have led to financial gain. Scientific inconsistencies. Several of Boris's claims about Mars conflict with established scientific data, raising further doubts. However, there are also those who take the case seriously. Supporters' main arguments. Knowledge at an extremely young age. Boris demonstrated advanced knowledge when he was only 2 or 3 years old, long before formal education. Consistency over time. He told the same story for years, repeating the same details without major contradictions. Behavioral assessment. Psychologists who observed Boris found no signs of deliberate lying or role-playing. Information ahead of its time. Some claims, such as the presence of water at Mars's poles, were confirmed by NASA years later. Today, Boris Kipriyanovich is 28 years old. Despite worldwide attention, he has chosen to live a quiet and ordinary life. In recent years, he has deliberately avoided the media and declined interview requests. In one of his rare interviews a few years ago, he said, "I remember everything I talked about as a child, but it's not as clear anymore. It feels like a dream. I remember Mars and Lemuria, but the details have faded. People still ask me questions, but I just want to live a normal life. I don't want to be seen as special." Boris studied physics at university and is now involved in scientific research. He remains interested in space and astronomy, but no longer speaks about past lives. His family has stepped away from public attention. His mother, Nadezhda, summarized it simply. Boris was a special child, but now he's an adult, living his own life, and we respect that. The story of Boris Kipriyanovich remains suspended in the gray area between science and belief. It cannot be proven, but it cannot be completely dismissed either. Maybe Boris truly carries memories from a life on Mars. Or maybe he was an exceptionally intelligent child who blended information with imagination. What remains certain is this: the story leaves us with more questions than answers. No matter what the truth is, This story reminds us of something important. The universe is full of mysteries, and there may be far more we don't understand than we realize. So what do you think? Do you believe Boris carried memories from a life on Mars? Or was this the result of an extraordinary mind and an incredibly vivid imagination? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Different perspectives often make stories like this even more fascinating. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more real and mysterious stories like this. Until the next video, take care.